They left the city, chasing silence. But what they found in the stillness was never meant to be uncovered. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Night Terror X. Tonight, we unravel 3 terrifying tales of isolation turned nightmare, where remote cabins hide impossible reflections, desert ranch houses whisper at night, and locked doors dare you to break the one rule that could keep you alive. These aren't just stories. They're disturbing accounts of what happens when you step outside the safety of normal life and into the unknown. So turn down the lights, put your phone on silent, and get ready to question every sound you hear after midnight. And if you've experienced something unexplainable, something you've never dared to speak of, drop it in the comments, or send your story to nightterrorxinbox@gmail.com. Don't forget to like the video if it chills your spine, and subscribe for more true horror stories that haunt you long after the screen goes dark. The red journal under the bed. So I was talking to my cousin Ryan one night, and he told me something I'll never forget. It happened right after he and his wife, Elise, got married during the lockdowns a few years back. They couldn't have the big wedding they wanted, but they still wanted to make their first night as newlyweds special. So they booked this tiny little guest house through a private rental site. Not an official hotel or anything, just a standalone guest cabin tucked behind someone's home, near the edge of a thick pine forest somewhere in Oregon. Ryan said the place looked cozy enough when they arrived. It had a warm porch light, a quaint little kitchenette, and smelled like fresh linen. Just one room with a bathroom off to the side. They brought takeout, shared a bottle of wine, and tried to make the best of it. But Elise kept saying she felt off, like the house didn't want them there. Around 10 p.m., Ryan was brushing his teeth when Elise started unpacking a few things. She bent down to stash a bag under the bed and noticed one of the drawers was slightly open. Inside was a red notebook. No dust on it, no label. Just clean, almost too new-looking. She figured maybe it was a welcome guide. But when she opened it, it wasn't instructions. It was journal entries, dozens of them, all written in different handwritings. At first, the notes seemed like normal guest book comments. Stuff like, had a peaceful weekend, or loved the quiet atmosphere. But then things shifted. The handwriting in later pages got shakier. One entry said, "Something tapped on the window at exactly 3 a.m. We checked, but no one was there." Another said, "There's a mirror above the bed. Don't look into it after midnight." Then a longer one caught her attention, written in frantic all caps. "Car wouldn't start. Phone died at the same time. Left at dawn. If you're reading this, do not stay here after midnight." Ryan said Elise had just turned to call him over when the front porch creaked, slowly, deliberately. Someone was walking up to the door. He came out of the bathroom just as Elise whispered, "There's something seriously wrong with this place." They flipped a few more pages together. Some entries had been scribbled out with thick black ink, like someone didn't want them to be read. Ryan held his phone flashlight behind the pages and tilted it just right. He could make out faded words that made his stomach knot. "He comes when you stop reading. Keep the pages turning or he finds you." Then a knock, just one. Then the sound of the front door unlocking, not kicked in, not forced, just unlocked. Like whoever it was had a key. A voice called out, "Just checking in. You folks doing okay?" It wasn't the host's voice. Ryan said it sounded too calm, too casual, but something about it didn't sit right. Elise quietly crept to the bedroom door and peeked through the keyhole. A man in a dark jacket and gloves, stood in the kitchen. He was unpacking a small black duffel bag, one item at a time, no rush, as if he knew they weren't going anywhere. Elise pointed toward the bathroom, the only other way out. There was a small window above the sink, too small for comfort, but it was something. They moved fast, but silently. Climbed onto the sink, pushed the window open. Ryan let Elise go first, then dropped out right behind her. They didn't stop to look back, just bolted straight into the woods, barefoot, cold, terrified. They ran for what felt like forever until they reached a narrow country road. Ryan waved down the first pair of headlights they saw, a grocery delivery van heading back toward town. The driver took one look at their shaken faces and told them to hop in. They went straight to the nearest police station and reported everything. Ryan said the cops took it seriously at first. They went out to check the property and came back, saying there was no sign of anyone else there. The front door was still locked. No red notebook, no duffel bag, nothing. The host, when contacted, said she lived alone in the front house and no one else had keys to the rental. She sounded confused, maybe even scared. But here's the part that makes your skin crawl. A few days later, Ryan and Elise tried to pull up the listing online so they could warn others. It was gone. Not just the listing, the entire host profile, wiped clean, like it had never existed. They never got a refund, never got answers, just questions that won't go away, like why the notebook told them not to stay after midnight, or why the man waited until the exact moment they were reading that page to show up. Since then, they don't rent private places anymore, only hotels with front desks, cameras, and other guests around. And even then, Elise checks every drawer, every mirror, and every window, just in case something is waiting to be found. So if you ever stay somewhere off the grid and find a red journal under the bed, don't read it, just leave. Now tell me, would you have stayed, or would you have left the second that porch creaked? The rules were not suggestions. A friend of mine, Jake, told me this after we went camping last fall. We were sitting around the fire, and out of nowhere he says, "Man, you ever book a place so remote now that you're not sure if you're going to come back from it?" He said it half jokingly, but the look in his eyes was dead serious. So I asked what happened, and this is what he told me. Jake had been grinding through back-to-back tech contracts for nearly a year. Overworked, no breaks, glued to screens 12 hours a day. One morning after he snapped at a teammate during a Zoom call, he realized he needed out. Not just from work, but from everything. He opened up a rental app and filtered for remote cabins. He wanted woods, quiet, and absolutely no cell service. He found this place called Woodpine Retreat, just a 2-hour drive from the city. It was listed as a private forest escape, hosted by someone named Carter. The photos showed a cozy little A-frame surrounded by thick pine trees. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, a narrow hallway, and total isolation. It looked perfect. All the reviews were glowing, but he noticed something strange. Several people mentioned the house rules in oddly serious tones. One said, "Just stick to Carter's instructions and you'll be fine." Another read, "The cabin's peaceful, but don't ignore the rules." Weird, right? Jake figured it was just people being overly dramatic. He clicked on the rules listed, nothing unusual. No smoking, no parties, no pets. But the day he was supposed to leave, Carter sent him a message that chilled him a little. It said, "Please follow 2 additional rules during your stay. 1. Do not unplug the lamp on the kitchen counter. 2. Do not open the basement door, no matter what you hear. Jake showed the message to me before he left, and I laughed it off. Told him it's probably just a busted stairwell or old wiring. Don't overthink it. He didn't laugh. The drive there was calm. The deeper he went, the more his signal dropped until it was gone. Completely. The road narrowed to a gravel path surrounded by trees so dense it felt like dusk, even at noon. The cabin looked just like the photos. Tidy porch, wood panels, a soft yellow glow coming from the kitchen window. Jake punched in the code Carter sent and stepped inside. He said everything smelled like cedar and old books, actually kind of comforting, until he saw the lamp. It was small, old, one of those antique-looking ones with a fraying shade and a warm, dim light. It sat alone on the kitchen counter, plugged into the only outlet. It buzzed faintly, like it had been on for years. He remembered Carter's warning, but didn't think much of it. He unpacked, made some food, and walked around. Everything was pretty standard, except for the door at the end of the hallway. It was painted white once, but the paint had flaked off. A rusted silver lock clung to it, like someone had recently tried to keep whatever was behind it in. Jake said the air around that door felt wrong, heavy, like the pressure changed as you got closer. That night things got strange. Around midnight, as he lay on the couch reading, the house creaked. But not like normal settling. It was rhythmic, almost intentional. Then he heard a knock, not on the door, on the floorboards, directly above the basement door. He tiptoed to the hallway and stared. The padlock was still there, but the knocking didn't stop. It got slower, louder, then stopped completely. Jake didn't sleep. He locked himself in the bedroom and waited for the sun. The next morning he nearly packed up and left. But pride got in the way. He felt dumb being scared of sounds. So he made coffee, walked into the kitchen, and saw the lamp pulsing. Not flickering, pulsing, like a heartbeat. Once, twice, then normal again. He backed away. Just then, outside through the window, he heard someone call his name. Not a stranger, his own voice. Panicked, he bolted outside. No signal, nothing, just trees and fog. But then at the edge of the woods he saw it, himself. Same clothes, same hair, same stance, a perfect copy just standing between the trees, watching. Jake ran back inside and slammed the door. He pushed a chair under the handle and grabbed his bag. But when he tried to leave, his car wouldn't start. Dead. Completely. He said the worst part wasn't being trapped. It was the feeling that something was toying with him, watching, waiting. He stayed up all night again, too scared to even blink. At exactly 2 a.m., footsteps echoed down the hallway, slow, heavy. Then came the sound of fingertips tapping on the bedroom window, 5 distinct taps. He grabbed a flashlight and stepped out onto the porch. No one. But there was something sitting on the step, a wooden box. Inside was a folded slip of paper. Go down, or I come in. The lamp in the kitchen was off, completely cold. The basement door, wide open. Jake said every instinct screamed at him to run, but some part of him needed to know. So he took the flashlight and stepped down into the basement. He said it felt like descending into a tomb. The walls were damp, the air was stale. At the bottom he stopped. In the corner, barely lit, stood the figure from the woods. It didn't move, just stood there, head slightly tilted, smiling. Jake ran, no hesitation, sprinting up the stairs, out the door, and into the woods. He didn't stop until his lungs burned. Behind him, he swore he could hear something chasing him, its breath rasping, its steps matching his. He dove behind a fallen tree and held his breath for what felt like hours. Eventually, it all went silent. When he returned at dawn, the cabin was just normal. The basement door was shut, the lamp back on. His car started on the first try. Jake left without looking back. But here's the final twist. When he checked his rental profile days later, there was a review posted under his name. He never wrote it. It said, "Left a bit early, but next time I'll stay longer." So what do you think? Would you have gone down those stairs? Or would you have left the moment you heard your own voice calling from the woods? The Painted Closet. A friend of mine, Leah, told me this after they took a family trip last fall. It started like any other getaway, just a break from city stress. But by the end, she said, they couldn't stop checking their own closets at night. So here's what happened. Leah, her husband Scott, and their daughter Maddie were all running on empty. Scott had been putting in 60-hour weeks. Maddie had just graduated college and was stuck in that weird in-between phase of life. And Leah herself felt like she was just barely holding the family together. One night, Maddie curled up on the couch next to her while Leah was flipping through rental listings online. "That one looks cool," Leah said, pointing to a photo. It was a sprawling old ranch-style house out in rural Arizona, far from any highways or cities, the kind of place with more wind than Wi-Fi. Maddie squinted at the screen. "I don't know. It's kinda spooky looking." Leah laughed. "Exactly. Peace and quiet." Scott checked out the pictures later that night and gave a thumbs up. Within 48 hours, the three of them were loading up the car and heading into the desert. They arrived just as the sun dipped low behind the distant hills. The house looked like the pictures, dusty but solid. It sat at the end of a dirt driveway that seemed to stretch for miles, surrounded by flat brush and jagged mountains on the horizon. No neighbors, no cell service, no noise but the wind. It was exactly what they needed. The inside was old but clean, retro wallpaper, creaky floorboards, outdated furniture, and faded art on the walls. That first night, they cooked dinner together and played cards in the living room until their laughter echoed through the house. Everyone seemed lighter, except Leah. That night, as she lay in bed reading, she felt something that still makes her blood run cold when she talks about it. Two hands, not hers, not Scott's, cold and small, slowly wrapped around her ankles beneath the blanket. Not pulling, just holding, almost playfully, gently. She shot upright and looked toward the foot of the bed. Empty. She looked toward the door, fully expecting Maddie to be crouched down, trying to spook her. But the hallway was dark. Maddie's door was shut tight across the hall. Leah rushed to check. Maddie was out cold, earbuds in, not even pretending to be awake. Leah barely slept the rest of the night. The next day, she said nothing. Why freak everyone out? They went into town, bought groceries, wandered through antique shops, and for a moment everything felt back to normal. But when they got home, something shifted again. While Maddie and Scott cooked dinner, Leah sat in the living room flipping through a travel magazine. As she glanced up to say something, she saw it. A figure, not someone from the family. A shadowy silhouette casually walking between the living room and kitchen. It didn't make a sound. It didn't look at her. It just passed straight through and vanished into the wall like it belonged there. She didn't say a word, not yet. That night, Maddie came to her, pale and tense. "Mom, can I sleep in your room tonight?" Leah blinked, surprised. Maddie wasn't the type to be scared of the dark. "I kept hearing voices," Maddie said. "Whispers in the hallway. At first I thought it was you and Dad talking, but when I checked, you were both asleep." Leah told her everything. The hands, the figure. Maddie's face went still. So it's not just me. They didn't tell Scott. He'd brush it off. They knew it. That night, Maddie dragged a sleeping bag to the living room. Nobody wanted to sleep alone. The next morning, Scott headed into town for coffee and supplies. Leah and Maddie stayed behind, both quietly rattled. As the wind howled outside, they began snooping around the house, just to understand it better. In the hallway, near Maddie's room, was a door they hadn't really paid attention to before. It looked recently painted, too clean, almost like it had been deliberately covered up. It led to a storage closet, empty shelves, a mop, some old rags, but something didn't feel right. Behind the shelves, there was a wooden panel, newer than the rest of the closet. Maddie knelt beside it. Should we open it? Leah hesitated. Her gut said no. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. They pulled the panel back. A narrow crawl space lay beyond. At the edge of it, right inside the opening, sat a stuffed rabbit, weathered gray and missing one eye. A child's toy, left behind, or maybe placed there. Maddie reached out to grab it, but Leah instinctively stopped her. "Don't touch it," she said sharply, her voice firmer than she expected. They closed the panel and backed out of the closet. That night the house felt heavier. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was expectant, like the house itself was holding its breath. Around 2 a.m., Leah and Scott heard faint footsteps just outside their bedroom. Slow, deliberate. They stopped right at the door. Then came a knock. Just one, quiet and careful. No one moved. Minutes passed. Then the steps slowly retreated. Scott whispered, "Was that Maddie?" But Leah already knew the answer. In the days that followed, they made it through the rest of the trip, but they weren't the same. No more jokes, no more games. They left the ranch house early. Maddie still brings it up sometimes. Do you think it wanted us to find that crawl space? Leah never answers right away, because she doesn't know what's worse, that something was hiding in the walls waiting to be discovered, or that it had been watching them the entire time, hoping they'd open that door. And the rabbit? She dreams about it sometimes, lying at the foot of her bed, just waiting to be touched.